Emma Thompson slammed her laptop shut, the sharp click echoing through the sterile office like a gunshot. It was Friday afternoon in downtown Seattle, and the rain was pounding against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Apex Ventures, a high-stakes venture capital firm where dreams went to get funded or die. At 28, Emma was the sharpest analyst on the team, crunching numbers and spotting market trends that made her indispensable. But her boss, Alexander Alex Hale, was the human equivalent of a glacier, cold, unyielding, and capable of sinking any ship that got too close. She hated him. Not in a dramatic movie villain way, but with the slow-burning resentment of someone who'd been overlooked one too many times. Alex was 35, Ivy League polished, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that never warmed. He barked orders without pleasantries, dismissed her ideas in meetings with a curt, not viable, and expected 80-hour weeks like it was a badge of honor. Last month, when she'd pitched a groundbreaking startup in sustainable energy, he'd shredded it in front of the board, calling it overly optimistic. Emma had seethed, her cheeks burning, while he moved on like it was nothing. Now, he wanted her on a last-minute business trip to Costa Rica. Some hotshot entrepreneur down there had a biotech pitch that could be the next big thing, rainforest-derived pharmaceuticals or something equally exotic. Alex had insisted she join him for the due diligence. "Your expertise is required," his email read, as impersonal as a tax form. "No, please. No, thanks. Just pack your bags and meet at Seattle-Tacoma Airport at 6 a.m. tomorrow." Emma groaned, rubbing her temples. She could have said no, weekends were sacred, especially with her boyfriend, Jake, planning a cozy hike in the Olympics. But refusing Alex meant risking her shot at that promotion she'd been gunning for. "Fine," she muttered to her empty cubicle. One weekend in paradise with the Ice King. What could go wrong? The next morning, the airport buzzed with pre-dawn travelers. Emma spotted Alex immediately, tall, broad-shouldered in a tailored suit, scrolling his phone at the gate like the world revolved around him. He glanced up as she approached, her carry-on rolling behind her. "Thompson," he said flatly, not even a nod. "You're late." "It's 5:55, she shot back, biting her tongue on the rest. "Asshole." They boarded the private jet Apex had chartered, a sleek Gulfstream that screamed executive privilege. Inside, leather seats and a stocked bar made it feel like a flying lounge. Emma settled across from him, popping in her earbuds to drown out the awkward silence. Alex buried himself in reports, occasionally typing furiously on his laptop. No small talk, no pleasantries. Just the hum of engines as they taxied down the runway. Hours into the flight, somewhere over the Pacific, turbulence hit. At first, it was mild, enough to make Emma grip her armrests. But then the plane jolted violently, lights flickering. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Folks, we're hitting some rough weather. Buckle up tight." Emma's heart raced. She glanced at Alex, who looked annoyingly calm, though his knuckles were white on his tablet. Another shudder, and the plane dipped sharply. Alarms blared. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. "Oh God," Emma whispered, fumbling for hers. "Stay calm," Alex said, his voice steady but edged with something she hadn't heard before. "Concern?" He reached across, helping secure her mask before his own. Then chaos. The engine roared unnaturally, a grinding screech that vibrated through her bones. The plane banked hard, spiraling. Emma screamed as luggage tumbled from overhead bins. Through the window, she saw ocean giving way to a blur of green, jungle. Impact came like a thunderclap. Metal tore, branches snapped, and the world spun in a cacophony of destruction. Emma's head slammed against the seat, stars exploding in her vision. Then, blackness. She woke to the acrid smell of smoke and fuel. Pain throbbed in her shoulder, her leg twisted awkwardly. Rain pattered on the wreckage, seeping through cracked windows. The jet, or what was left of it, lay crumpled in a dense thicket of vines and ferns, the fuselage split like a cracked egg. Flames licked the tail, hissing in the downpour. "Alex!" she croaked, unbuckling with shaking hands. No answer. Panic surged. She crawled over debris, ignoring the gash on her forehead dripping blood. There he was, slumped in his seat, a cut across his cheek, but breathing. "Wake up!" She shook him, her voice hoarse. His eyes fluttered open, green and dazed. "Thompson." "What?" "Plane crashed. We're in the forest." Pilots, gone. She glanced toward the cockpit, shattered and empty. No sign of the crew. Alex sat up, wincing, assessing the damage with that analytical gaze. We need to get out. Fire could spread. Together, they pried open the emergency exit, tumbling into the mud. The jungle enveloped them, towering trees, exotic bird calls, and humidity like a wet blanket. Emma's phone was dead, shattered screen. Alex checked his, no signal. We're stranded, she said, voice trembling. What now? He stood, ripping a strip from his shirt to bandage her head. Survive. Find water, shelter. Help will come. But as the sun dipped, casting long shadows through the canopy, Emma wondered if survival meant more than just staying alive. Hating him was easy in the office. Here, in this green hell, they were all each other had. Little did she know, the forest held secrets that would force them closer than she'd ever imagined, and thaw the ice between them in ways neither expected. The rain didn't let up. It came in sheets, turning the jungle floor into a slick, sucking mud that pulled at their shoes with every step. Emma's sneakers, chosen for a quick weekend in San Jose, not a survival trek, were already soaked through, her socks squelching with each movement. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd slammed into the seat during the crash, and the gash on her forehead stung every time rainwater ran into it. Alex moved ahead, breaking branches to make a rough path. He'd torn off both sleeves of his once crisp white dress shirt, using one to bind her head wound and the other to wrap a nasty scrape on his own forearm. The remaining shirt clung to his back, translucent with sweat and rain, revealing the lean muscles that office suits had always hidden. They needed 3 things, he'd said in that clipped, boardroom voice. Shelter, water, fire. Shelter first. The plane wreckage was still smoldering despite the downpour, and the smell of burning jet fuel made Emma's stomach turn. They couldn't stay there. After 30 minutes of slogging, they found a small clearing beneath a massive ceiba tree whose buttress roots formed a natural roof. The ground here was slightly higher, less flooded. Alex dropped the small emergency kit he'd salvaged from the cockpit, 2 half-liter water bottles, one already cracked, a flashlight with a dying battery, a Swiss Army knife, a foil emergency blanket, and a flare gun with only 1 round. Not much, he muttered, surveying their haul. Emma sank against a root, knees drawn up. It's something. He didn't answer. Instead, he started gathering palm fronds, using the knife to cut them free. His movements were precise, efficient. No wasted energy. She watched him work, surprised at how quickly he built a crude lean-to against the tree trunk, layering the broad leaves like shingles. When he finished, it looked almost professional. Where'd you learn that? She asked despite herself. Boy Scouts. Then a few weeks in Patagonia after college. Survival training. He wiped rain from his face with the back of his hand. You. Netflix documentaries, she said dryly. And one very bad camping trip with Jake where we forgot the tent poles. Alex gave the smallest of nods, almost a smile, but not quite. He handed her the foil blanket. Wrap up. You're shaking. She was. Adrenaline crash, shock, cold. She pulled the thin silver sheet around her shoulders like a cape. It crinkled loudly in the quiet jungle. They sat under the shelter as night fell fast, tropical dark, thick and complete. The flashlight beam danced across dripping leaves before Alex clicked it off to save the battery. In the blackness, the sounds amplified. Insects screaming, water dripping, distant howler monkeys calling like lost souls. Emma's teeth chattered. She scooted closer to the trunk, trying to conserve heat. Alex noticed. Body heat, he said matter-of-factly. We need to stay warm. She stiffened. I'm fine. You're not. His voice was low, almost gentle. Hypothermia is real. We share the blanket. That's it. Emma swallowed. This was Alex Hale, the man who'd once told her in a performance review that her emotional investment in projects was a liability. Now he was asking her to huddle together like strangers on a life raft. But she was freezing. And logic won. She shifted closer. He opened his arm, and she leaned into his side, tucking the foil around both of them. His skin was warm through the wet shirt. She could feel the steady rise and fall of his chest, the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with smoke and sweat. It was the closest she'd ever been to him, and the absurdity of it almost made her laugh. Or cry. Neither spoke for a long time. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry about the energy pitch. Last month." Emma blinked in the dark. "You're apologizing?" "I was wrong. It was viable. I was protecting the board's conservative outlook. My call, not yours. You deserved better." She didn't know what to say. The words hung between them, heavier than the humidity. "Why tell me now?" she whispered. "Because we might not get another chance." The honesty hit harder than the crash. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the wall she'd built. They stayed like that, pressed together under the dripping leaves, listening to the jungle breathe. Eventually, exhaustion won. Emma's head dropped onto his shoulder. His arms settled around her, careful, almost hesitant. She fell asleep to the sound of rain and his heartbeat. When she woke, gray dawn filtered through the canopy. Alex was already up, crouched by a small pile of kindling he'd somehow kept dry under the shelter. He struck the knife against a flint-like stone he'd found, sparks flying. After several tries, a thin thread of smoke rose. He blew gently, coaxing the ember into flame. Emma watched, mesmerized. The man who lived in glass offices and PowerPoint decks was now coaxing fire from nothing. He glanced up, caught her staring. Coffee's coming. Rainwater and optimism. She managed a tired smile. "I'll take it." He poured the last of the cracked water bottle into the foil blanket, fashioned into a makeshift cup, and set it near the fire to warm. Then he looked at her, really looked, not the cold appraisal she was used to. "We're going to make it out of here, Thompson." For the first time, she believed him. But as the morning light strengthened, revealing how deep in the jungle they really were, no trails, no smoke signals, no sign of rescue, Emma realized the real challenge wasn't just surviving the elements. It was surviving each other. By mid-morning the rain had finally stopped, leaving the jungle steaming. Every leaf dripped, every breath felt thick with moisture. Emma's clothes were stiff with dried mud and sweat, and the ache in her shoulder had deepened into a dull, constant throb. She watched Alex pack the emergency kit with methodical care, folding the foil blanket, securing the knife, checking the single flare. "We follow the stream we heard last night," he said. "Water flows downhill. Rivers lead to people eventually. Settlements, roads, maybe even a ranger station." Emma nodded. It made sense. She'd read enough survival stories to know the rule: don't wander aimlessly. But the jungle didn't care about logic. Vines tangled underfoot, roots rose like tripwires, and the canopy swallowed most of the sunlight. They moved slowly. Alex took point, using a long stick to probe for hidden drops or snake holes. Emma followed, trying not to think about how far they might have to go. Every hour felt like 3. Her stomach growled, loud enough that Alex glanced back once, eyebrow raised. "Hungry?" he asked. "Starving." "You?" "Same." He paused, scanning the undergrowth. "We'll look for food. Fruit, maybe roots. Nothing we can't identify." They found a cluster of guava trees first, small, green fruit still hard, but edible. Emma bit into one, the tart juice exploding on her tongue. It wasn't much, but it quieted the gnawing. Alex ate 2 without comment, then handed her a third. "Pace yourself," he said. "We don't know how long this lasts." They kept moving. By early afternoon they reached the stream, a narrow ribbon of brown water tumbling over mossy rocks. It looked like salvation. Emma dropped to her knees and scooped water into her hands, but Alex caught her wrist. "Wait. Boil it first. We have the fire. Giardia will ruin us faster than hunger." She stared at him. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." They built another small fire on a flat rock beside the water. Alex used the cracked bottle and the foil to heat a few cups. It took forever. Patience Emma didn't know he had. When the water finally cooled, they drank slowly, savoring it like wine. Afterward, they followed the stream downstream. The terrain grew rougher, steep banks, slippery stones. Emma slipped once, scraping her knee bloody. Alex was there in an instant, steadying her with a hand under her elbow. "Easy," he murmured. She pulled away, embarrassed. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. The jungle was wearing her down, and the constant nearness of him, His quiet competence, the way he never complained, was starting to chip away at the anger she'd nursed for months. They talked little, saving energy. But the silence wasn't hostile anymore. It was companionable, necessary. Late afternoon brought the first real problem. The stream widened into a small river, rushing faster now, white water churning around boulders. A fallen tree spanned half the width, its trunk slick with moss. On the far side, the bank looked flatter, easier walking. We cross here, Alex decided. The current's strong, but we can use the log. Emma eyed the water. It looked deep in places, fast enough to knock her off her feet. I don't know. We don't have a choice. Going back upriver takes us deeper into the wilderness. This is our best shot. He went first, testing each step on the log. Halfway across, he turned, held out his hand. Come on, Thompson. 1 foot in front of the other. She swallowed. Pride warred with fear. Pride lost. She stepped onto the log. It creaked. Her arms windmilled for balance. Alex's hand closed around hers, firm, warm, steady. Eyes on me, he said. Not the water. She locked her gaze on his face. The cut on his cheek had scabbed over. His eyes were focused, calm, nothing like the cold stare she remembered from conference rooms. Step by step. Halfway across, the log shifted under her weight. A crack like gunfire. She yelped, clutching his arm. Hold on, he shouted. The trunk rolled. Emma's foot slipped. She fell sideways, hitting the water hard. The current grabbed her instantly, cold and merciless. She surfaced gasping, arms flailing. The river pulled her downstream, rocks scraping her legs. Then Alex was there, diving in after her, powerful strokes closing the distance. He reached her, wrapped an arm around her waist, and kicked hard toward the bank. They slammed into a shallow pool, half drowning, half crawling onto the mud. Emma coughed, retching water. Alex dragged her higher, onto dry leaves, then collapsed beside her, chest heaving. For a long minute, neither spoke. Just breathing. Then he rolled onto his side, looking at her. You okay? She nodded, teeth chattering. Yeah. Thanks to you. He pushed wet hair off his forehead. We're even. You woke me up in the wreckage. A weak laugh escaped her. Fair. They lay there a while, letting the sun warm their skin. When they finally sat up, Emma realized something had changed. The hate she'd carried for him felt smaller now, almost silly in the face of everything else. Alex glanced downstream. We lost the kit. Flare's gone. Flashlight too. Emma's stomach dropped. So no signal. No fire starter. Just the knife and what we're wearing. He met her eyes. We're really on our own now. She took a slow breath. Then we keep going. Together. He studied her for a moment, really studied her, like he was seeing her for the first time. Together, he agreed. As the sun dipped lower, painting the river gold, they stood up and started walking again. Side by side. No longer boss and employee. Just two people who had to survive the night, and whatever came after. Night fell faster than Emma expected. 1 minute the river glinted gold in the late sun, the next the jungle swallowed the light whole. Without the flare or flashlight, darkness pressed in like a living thing, thick, humid, full of unseen movement. They found a small overhang of rock along the bank, just wide enough for two people to sit shoulder to shoulder. The stone was still warm from the day. Better than sleeping on the ground where things crawled. Alex gathered what dry leaves and twigs he could find under the overhang, piling them for a fire. He struck the knife against a quartz pebble he'd pocketed earlier, sparks jumping in the dark. After 10 frustrating minutes, a tiny flame caught. Emma fed it carefully, small sticks, then larger ones. The fire was pitiful, barely enough to warm their hands, but it was light. It was hope. They sat close to it, knees touching. Neither spoke for a while. The river rushed past, a constant white noise that almost masked the loneliness. Emma broke the silence first. How long do you think before they find us? Alex stared into the flames. Search will start tomorrow, maybe the day after. They'll know the flight plan. But this part of Costa Rica, it's dense. Thousands of square miles. No roads. No cell towers. They'll use planes, maybe helicopters, but the canopy hides everything. So we could be here weeks. Could be. He didn't sugarcoat it. Or longer. Emma pulled her knees tighter to her chest. Jake's probably losing his mind. My mom too. Alex nodded slowly. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not really. Just the office. My sister might notice when I don't answer her texts, but... He trailed off. She glanced at him. You don't have people waiting? Not like that. His voice was quiet. Works always come first. Meetings. Deals. I told myself it was temporary. Then it wasn't. Emma studied the side of his face, lit orange by the fire. For the first time she saw the weariness behind the polished mask, the faint lines at his eyes, the tension in his jaw he never let go. I thought you loved it, she said. The power. The control. I did. At first. He poked the fire with a stick. Then it became the only thing I was good at. She let that sit between them. After a moment she asked, Why were you so hard on me? He exhaled through his nose. Because you reminded me of who I used to be. Before I got careful. You still believed ideas could change things. I stopped believing that a long time ago. Seeing it in you made me angry. Made me want to prove you wrong so I wouldn't have to feel like I'd failed. Emma felt the words land like stones in her chest. Not cruel. Just honest. I wasn't trying to threaten you, she said softly. I know. That's what made it worse. Silence again. The fire crackled. Somewhere upstream, a branch snapped, probably an animal, but they both tensed. Emma shivered despite the warmth. I'm scared, Alex. He looked at her then, really looked. Not the boss assessing an employee. Just a man seeing a woman who might not make it out of this. I am too, he admitted. The confession hung there, raw and unexpected. She reached over and took his hand. His fingers were cold, knuckles scraped raw from the day's work. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his palm up, lacing their fingers together. Neither of them spoke after that. They just sat, hands clasped, watching the fire die down to embers. When it was nothing but glowing coals, Alex spread the last of the dry leaves over them for insulation. They lay down on the hard stone shelf, back to back at first, then slowly, naturally, he shifted so his arm curved around her waist, pulling her against his chest. She let him. Needed him. His heartbeat was steady against her spine. Her breathing slowed to match his. I'm glad it was you, she whispered into the dark. He pressed his lips briefly to the back of her head. Not a kiss, just contact. Me too. They slept like that, tangled together for warmth and something more. The jungle sang its endless night song around them. Frogs, insects, distant catcalls. But for the first time since the crash, Emma didn't feel completely alone. Morning came with mist and birdsong. The fire was dead. They were stiff, bruised, and hungrier than ever. Alex stood first, stretching. We need real food today. Protein. I saw fish in the shallows yesterday. Emma nodded. And something to carry water. I'm not drinking river sludge again without boiling it. They spent the morning scavenging. Alex fashioned a crude spear from a sharpened sapling. Emma found a large, hollowed-out seed pod that could hold water. They rigged a small dam in a quiet pool and waited. The first fish was small, silver, and fast. Alex missed twice before he drove the spear through one. He cleaned it with a knife, grimacing at the mess, then skewered it over a new fire. When it was cooked, charred outside, barely done inside, they split it. The flesh was hot, flaky, a little muddy tasting. It was the best thing Emma had ever eaten. They looked at each other across the tiny fire, faces smeared with soot and river mud, and laughed, real, ragged laughter that hurt their ribs but felt like release. We're disgusting, she said. Alive, he corrected. As the sun climbed higher, they packed what little they had and started downstream again. But something had shifted permanently between them. The man she'd hated for his coldness now felt like the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. And the woman he'd tried to break now held his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. They walked on, side by side, into whatever the river had waiting. Because whatever came next, they would face it together. The river had become their road, their compass, their lifeline. For 3 days they followed it, the current growing stronger, the banks steeper. Hunger was a constant companion now. Guava and the occasional fish weren't enough. Emma's ribs were starting to show under her torn shirt. Alex's face had hollowed, the sharp executive lines softened by exhaustion and stubble. They spoke more as the days blurred. Not about work anymore. About childhoods. Favorite songs. The stupid things that made them laugh when they were kids. Emma told him about the treehouse her dad built in their backyard in Portland, how she'd hide there with books and pretend the world couldn't find her. Alex admitted he used to sneak out at night in high school to watch meteor showers on the roof of his dorm, because it was the only time he felt small in a good way. "I stopped looking up after college," he said once, voice low. "Too busy looking at spreadsheets." Emma nudged him with her elbow. "You're looking up now." He glanced at the canopy, then back at her. "Yeah, I am." On the fourth afternoon, the sky turned the color of bruised plums. Thunder rumbled like distant artillery. The air grew electric, thick with the promise of violence. "We need shelter," Alex said, scanning the banks. "Fast." They found a shallow cave carved into a limestone cliff, barely 10 feet deep but dry inside. They scrambled up the muddy slope just as the first fat drops fell. Then the sky opened. Rain hammered the river into froth. Wind tore leaves from trees. Lightning cracked white across the dark. Inside the cave, they pressed against the back wall, watching the world dissolve. Emma shivered violently. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in minutes. Alex pulled her close without asking, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him, grateful for the warmth, the solidness of his chest. The storm raged for hours. Water poured off the cliff lip in sheets, forming a curtain at the cave entrance. Thunder shook the ground. Emma buried her face in the crook of his neck. He rested his chin on her head. "I thought I was going to die in that plane," she whispered during a lull. "I kept thinking about all the things I never said. To Jake. To my mom. To you." Alex's arms tightened. "What would you have said to me?" She hesitated. "That you scared me. Not because you were mean, but because you were everything I wanted to be, brilliant, untouchable, and I hated that I still wanted your approval. Even after you tore my ideas apart." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I would have told you," he said finally, "that I noticed you. Every time you walked into a meeting with that fire in your eyes. Every time you fought for something you believed in. I noticed. And it terrified me. Because if I let myself care, I'd have to admit I was unhappy. That I'd built a life I didn't want." Emma turned in his arms so she could see his face. Rainlight flickered across his features. Tired, open, vulnerable. "I'm sorry I made it harder," she said. "I'm sorry I made it impossible." Lightning flashed again. Thunder followed so close the cave vibrated. Emma flinched. Alex pulled her tighter, one hand cradling the back of her head. When the storm finally eased to a steady drizzle, night had fallen. The river had risen, roaring past their cave like a freight train. They couldn't leave until morning. They lay down on the cold stone floor. No blanket, no fire. Just each other. Alex lay on his back, Emma curled against his side, head on his chest. His heartbeat was strong under her ear. "Alex." "Yeah. If we get out of here." "When?" he corrected gently. "When we get out. What happens?" "Back in Seattle. The office. All of it." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know. But I know I don't want to go back to the way it was. I don't want to be that guy anymore. The one who pushes people away because it's safer." She lifted her head. "And me?" He met her eyes in the dimness. "I want to know you. Really know you. Not as my analyst. As Emma." Her throat tightened. She leaned up and kissed him, soft at first, tentative. Then deeper, hungry, like they'd both been starving for more than food. When they broke apart, breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm not good at this," he whispered. "Relationships. Feelings. I'll probably screw it up." Then we'll screw it up together, she said. And fix it together. They kissed again, slower this time. Hands exploring, learning. Not rushing. Just claiming the truth they'd both felt growing since the first night under the ceiba tree. Later, tangled together for warmth, they listened to the rain soften to a whisper. Emma fell asleep with his fingers tracing lazy circles on her back. When morning came, the river had calmed. Sunlight pierced the canopy in golden shafts. The world smelled clean, renewed. They stepped out of the cave hand in hand. Downstream, the river widened, slowed. Around a bend, they saw it, a thin column of smoke rising above the trees. Not from their fire. From someone else's. Emma's heart leaped. Alex! He squeezed her hand. I see it. They looked at each other, dirty, battered, alive. And smiled. Rescue was close. But whatever came next, they would face it changed. Together. Not as boss and employee. Not even just as survivors. As two people who had found each other in the wreckage. And refused to let go. The smoke belonged to a small indigenous eco-lodge tucked against the riverbank, a cluster of thatched bungalows, solar panels glinting in the morning sun, and a wooden dock where a battered fishing boat bobbed. Two rangers in faded green uniforms spotted them first. One dropped his coffee mug. The other started shouting in rapid Spanish. Emma and Alex stumbled out of the trees like ghosts, mud-caked, sunburned, clothes in tatters, but walking upright. Hand in hand. The rangers ran to meet them. Water bottles were pressed into their hands. A woman from the lodge wrapped them in blankets. Someone radioed the nearest town. Within minutes, the crackle of static promised helicopters. Emma sank onto a bench, legs shaking. Alex stayed beside her, arm around her shoulders, as if letting go might make the world disappear again. They were fed rice, beans, fresh mango, coffee so strong it made her eyes water. Real food. It tasted like a miracle. A doctor from the nearest clinic arrived by speedboat an hour later. He checked them over, dehydration, cuts, bruises, mild infections. Nothing life-threatening. Emma's shoulder was badly sprained but not broken. Alex had a cracked rib he'd never mentioned. They were both given antibiotics, painkillers, and stern instructions to rest. The helicopter came at dusk, U.S. Embassy personnel plus Costa Rican air rescue. They were strapped in, blankets tucked around them, and lifted above the canopy. The jungle fell away beneath them like a green sea. Emma pressed her face to the window, watching the river snake through the trees, the same river that had carried them, fed them, nearly drowned them. Alex reached over and took her hand. She squeezed back. They landed in San Jose under floodlights. Medics. Reporters. Flashing cameras. Emma's phone, recovered from the wreckage and miraculously still functional after drying out, was handed to her. 37 missed calls from Jake. 21 from her mother. A dozen voicemails. She listened to the first one in the hospital hallway while Alex was getting x-rays. Jake's voice cracked. Baby, they said the plane went down. Please tell me you're okay. Please. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. When Alex emerged from the exam room, arm in a sling, she was sitting on the floor, phone in her lap. He crouched beside her. You okay? She looked up at him, really looked. The man who'd once terrified her with a single raised eyebrow now looked tired, human, and heartbreakingly tender. I have to call him, she said. Alex nodded. No jealousy. No possessiveness. Just understanding. I know. She made the call from a quiet corner of the hospital garden. Jake answered on the first ring. Emma. I'm okay, she said, voice breaking. I'm safe. He sobbed. She cried with him. They talked for 20 minutes. Shock, relief, love. When she told him she was coming home tomorrow, he said he'd meet her at Seattle-Tacoma. She didn't tell him everything. Not yet. The next morning they flew commercial back to Seattle, first class, courtesy of Apex's insurance. They sat side by side, silent most of the way. Hands linked across the armrest. When the plane touched down at Seattle-Tacoma, the terminal felt surreal, too bright, too loud, too clean. Jake was waiting at arrivals, eyes red, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite. He ran to her, pulled her into a crushing hug. Emma hugged him back, hard. She smelled his familiar cologne, felt the scratch of his beard. Home. But when she stepped back, she looked over Jake's shoulder. Alex stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching with quiet acceptance. Jake noticed. Looked between them. Emma took a breath. Jake. There's something I need to tell you. They talked in a quiet corner of the arrivals lounge. She told him about the crash. The jungle. The nights. The way survival had stripped everything down to what mattered. She told him she loved him, always would, but that something had changed. Irrevocably. Jake listened, tears in his eyes. When she finished, he nodded slowly. I felt it, he said. When you didn't answer right away. I knew. They hugged again, one last long embrace. Then he let go. Be happy, Em, he whispered. You deserve it. He walked away without looking back. Emma stood there, heartbreaking and mending at the same time. Alex approached slowly. You didn't have to do that for me. I didn't, she said. I did it for me. He took her hand. What now? She looked up at him, the man who'd once been her cold boss, now the person who knew her better than anyone. Now we figure it out, she said. One day at a time. No rush. No pressure. He smiled, small, real, the kind she'd never seen in the office. Deal. Weeks later, Apex Ventures announced a new sustainability fund. Emma was named co-lead. Alex stepped back from day-to-day operations, taking a sabbatical to reassess priorities. They started small. Coffee dates. Long walks in Discovery Park. Late-night talks on her tiny balcony overlooking the Sound. Sometimes they argued, old habits die hard. Sometimes they laughed until they couldn't breathe. And sometimes, when the Seattle rain fell hard against the windows, they held each other and remembered the jungle. The river. The cave. The nights they thought might be their last. One evening, 6 months after the crash, they stood on Alki Beach watching the sunset paint the Olympics gold. Emma leaned against him. You know what I realized out there? What? That I never hated you, she said. I hated how much I wanted you to see me. Alex turned her to face him, hands framing her face. I see you, he said quietly. I've always seen you. Then he kissed her, slow, certain, like a promise kept. The wind carried the salt and the sound of waves. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt cold.